So I saw on Google Earth what looked like a giant face. And when I got there and put the drone up, I found more than just a giant face.
Deep in Peru, there's a place that feels impossible. Giant stones, some heavier than trucks, fit together so perfectly it seems like magic. No wheels, no iron tools, yet the walls have stood for centuries, resisting earthquakes and time. Now, with AI, we're finally uncovering secrets hidden for thousands of years, revealing mysteries that will leave you amazed and speechless. Join us as we discover this long-hidden mystery, unveiling Peru's ancient megalithic mystery. Standing before the giant wall of 6 stones at Ollantaytambo, a strange realization hits. Something about this place feels unfinished, almost as if the builders suddenly stopped and walked away mid-project. The blocks don't look ruined by time. Instead, they sit there as though construction was frozen in place. And yet, even in this incomplete state, the sheer size, the unbelievable precision, and the mystery behind it all outshine many of the world's greatest monuments. This is where the questions begin to pile up. When you consider the massive stones, the flawless joints that lock together without mortar, the way these rocks were dragged across valleys without wheels, and the fact that iron tools didn't even exist here at the time, the site becomes almost impossible to explain. For years, many researchers, engineers, and historians whispered the same thing: what we see here should not exist. That's exactly why Ollantaytambo is no ordinary ruin. It has become one of Peru's greatest mysteries, a megalithic wonder that seems to defy everything we know about ancient construction. The truth isn't that humans didn't build it. The real shock is that humans, using the tools believed to exist back then, could not have possibly built it in the way it stands today. This is not about legends or fantasies. It's about real science like mathematics, physics, and engineering. Some of these stones weigh up to 70 tons, yet they were lifted without cranes, shaped without steel, and arranged with incredible astronomical alignment. And all of this happened on a mountain with no flat terrain, no nearby quarry, and no clear method to achieve such results. They're built to shift slightly during tremors so they don't collapse. That kind of knowledge feels either long forgotten or far older than what is written in our history books. Geologists have studied the stones, engineers have measured the angles and balance of the structures. Many of them admit openly that even today, without digital modeling and heavy machines, they couldn't recreate it. That leaves 2 possibilities. Either the builders knew something that we no longer remember, or our timeline of history is missing a massive chapter. Some archaeologists think the Inca inherited the site instead of creating it all. The rougher upper terraces look much like typical Inca craftsmanship, still impressive, but not as flawless as the giant monoliths below. If that's true, then Ollantaytambo is not purely an Inca creation. It could be a layered site, where the Inca built on top of something far older and far more advanced. This theory has grown stronger recently, thanks to modern technology. With 3D scanning, satellite imaging, and now artificial intelligence, researchers are uncovering details no one could see before. AI-assisted analysis has revealed inconsistencies in building techniques, stone sources, and alignments that point to multiple stages of construction. Some of these stages may go back not just centuries, but thousands of years before the Inca. If that's true, then maybe the Inca were just as amazed as we are. They may have preserved the site, expanded parts of it, and worshipped there, but they likely did not begin it. What stands here continues to challenge every rule of history. By logic and by engineering standards, Ollantaytambo should not even be possible. The mystery doesn't demand aliens or magical powers, but it does suggest that human civilization may have been far more advanced than we ever thought. And thanks to AI, we are beginning to see patterns and evidence that human eyes alone had missed for generations. These ruins might not just be stones left behind. They could be a message from the past, carved into the earth, waiting for us to finally decode. Now, to fully understand this mystery, you need to stay tuned for more unbelievable revelations. The Inca fortress that defies time and logic. High in Peru's sacred valley, tucked between towering mountains and winding rivers, rises a place that feels unforgettable. Ollantaytambo, a name that hums with the echo of ancient power, once served as the royal estate of the Inca Emperor Pachacuti, and later stood as one of the last great fortresses against the Spanish. For centuries people have studied it, yet it remains wrapped in mystery, one of the most puzzling treasures of the ancient world. This is not just another ruin meant to be admired from afar. The town itself is still alive. Families continue to live inside homes first built by the Inca. They walk on the same stone streets carved long ago and drink water carried by aqueducts that have flowed non-stop for over 500 years. That in itself feels magical, but what rises above the village is what has left travelers, researchers, and skeptics speechless generation after generation. Climbing the mountain slope, you see terraces cut into the rock, each one perfectly designed to hold the earth steady and resist earthquakes. At first glance, the layout feels defensive, like a military stronghold built to guard the valley. Standing at the base, the power of its walls makes that clear. But the higher you climb, winding past channels of running water and stairways carved from solid stone, the feeling begins to change. Suddenly, the place doesn't seem like a fortress at all. It feels ceremonial, sacred, like a space where kings and priests might have gathered beneath the stars. At the top, the real mystery reveals itself. Enormous stone blocks, stacked with remarkable accuracy, form walls that have resisted every earthquake that shattered towns below. These stones are not the kind that can be easily dragged uphill. Some weigh more than 50 tons, yet they sit so tightly together that not even the thinnest slip of paper could pass between them. The precision feels otherworldly, far beyond what we expect from the 15th century. The puzzle becomes even deeper when you remember what the Inca did not have. They had no written system to record complex calculations. They had no iron or steel tools strong enough to carve hard stone. They had no wheels for heavy transport. And still, somehow they achieved something so advanced that modern engineers continue to debate it today. The question resounds like an echo across the sacred valley. How is this possible? When people try to explain how Ollantaytambo was built, the answers often sound too simple. Some say ramps, others suggest wooden rollers or sheer human strength. But none of these ideas truly make sense when you're standing face to face with stones that weigh more than 50 tons and fit together with machine-like precision. That's why many researchers now believe Emperor Pachacuti didn't begin this masterpiece from scratch. Evidence suggests the fortress may have been raised on top of something much older, a foundation left behind by a civilization we barely know. And if that is true, the mystery becomes far bigger. If the Inca inherited this place, what other truths about their history have we misunderstood? Who were the unknown builders that came before? And how much of their genius was lost forever without ever being written down? Even the way the site is designed feels too deliberate to be ordinary. The terraces aren't just for farming. They are angled in ways that stop landslides. Water flows through channels carved with such exact slopes that they manage pressure perfectly, never flooding, never failing, and still working after centuries. The design is both practical and symbolic, showing an understanding of nature, geometry, and even time itself that feels far ahead of its era. That brilliance made Ollantaytambo more than a city. It became a fortress, a place of last hope during the Spanish conquest. Manco Inca, one of the final leaders of resistance, used the high terraces and narrow pathways to his advantage. His warriors rained stones and arrows down on the Spanish from above, forcing them back in a rare victory. For a short moment, the empire stood strong. But like the rest of the Inca world, Ollantaytambo eventually fell into Spanish hands. What survived is not just a ruin but an unshakable puzzle. Centuries of earthquakes, battles, and erosion have not broken it. The walls still rise with impossible precision. The channels still carry water. The terraces still hold the mountains in place. And the more you study it, the stranger it becomes. The question grows larger with every detail. Was this truly built by humans with only the tools and knowledge we think they had? Or are we staring at evidence of something far beyond what history has told us? Keep watching to find out. The giant stones that defy human logic. At Ollantaytambo, visitors quickly realize they aren't just walking through another ruin. The longer you look, the more it feels like a riddle carved into stone. At the center of this mystery are not small bricks or ordinary slabs, but gigantic rocks, some the size of a bus and weighing over 50 tons. And the most unbelievable part is that these stones weren't taken from the mountain where Ollantaytambo stands. They were hauled all the way from the opposite side of the valley, dragged out of a quarry across a river, and then pulled uphill through steep, uneven ground. Even with cranes, trucks, and hydraulic machines, moving stones that size today would take teams of experts weeks of planning. But the builders of Ollantaytambo had none of that. No cranes, no engines, no carts, and not even the wheel. The Inca civilization never used wheel-based transport. So how in the world were these massive stones carried across rivers and mountains? That is the question no one can answer with certainty. The common explanation is brute force. Thousands of workers pushing with ropes, wooden rollers, and ramps. But the land itself makes that idea almost impossible. To get the stones from the quarry, you would need to cross the Urubamba River and then climb winding mountain paths that are brutally steep. Along the way, archaeologists have even found massive blocks left behind, as if they had been dropped when attempts to move them failed. That shows the struggle was real, but it still doesn't explain how the finished ones made it all the way to the top. And carrying the stones was only the beginning. Once they reached the site, the blocks were carved and set into place with a perfection that defies reason. When you stand before the famous wall of 6 monoliths, one of Ollantaytambo's most breathtaking features, the puzzle deepens. These 6 enormous stones rise like silent guardians, fitted so tightly that their arrangement feels almost mathematical, as if every angle and every line was chosen with impossible precision. The result looks both sacred and defensive, and yet no one can fully explain how it was achieved. Each block at Ollantaytambo was not just stacked carelessly, it was carved to lock perfectly with the one beside it. Some of the stones have tiny cutout spaces, while others carry strange bumps known as knobs. Scholars argue over their purpose. Some think they were used as grips to move the stones, while others believe they held a deeper meaning, perhaps a forgotten code left behind in stone. Whatever their function, none of these details seem accidental. What's most striking is the flawless way the stones fit together. These aren't rough blocks piled like toys. They are shaped so smoothly and so precisely that you can't even slide a razor blade between them. No cement, no filler, and yet they have stood firmly for centuries in a region where earthquakes are frequent and powerful. Time and again, tremors have crumbled Spanish colonial buildings nearby, but Ollantaytambo's walls remain standing as if the builders had a secret knowledge of earthquakes and designed the walls to move with the earth instead of collapsing. The mystery only deepens when you realize the material itself was harder than the tools the Inca are known to have used. Bronze chisels would have barely scratched the surface, yet these stones display flat faces, neat angles, and flawless edges. Their joints aren't the product of erosion or accident. They were carved with intent and great skill. But how? Some believe techniques were used that we no longer understand, methods that vanished with conquest or were never written down. Others suggest the site began with an earlier culture, one with engineering knowledge far more advanced than we imagine. There are even daring ideas that the stones were softened using native plants, turning them into something like clay before being molded into place. While evidence for this is thin, the very existence of such theories shows how desperate people are to explain the unexplainable. The transportation, the shaping, the positioning, all of it together is what has earned Ollantaytambo its reputation as impossible. Not because the stones defy nature, but because they should not have been achievable with the resources of that time. Yet the proof towers above us, silent and immovable. The deeper you study the walls, the less they feel like ruins left behind, and the more they resemble a deliberate message built into stone, daring us to uncover its meaning. Masterful craft without metal. Walking close to the ancient walls of Ollantaytambo feels like stepping into a riddle carved in stone. What you see at first seems simple, rows of rocks placed on top of one another, but the moment you lean in, that illusion melts away, and the truth hits you. These stones weren't just stacked, they were sculpted with such skill that every edge, curve, and corner fits its neighbor like pieces of a giant puzzle. The builders didn't need cement because the stones themselves locked together so perfectly. Some blocks even have up to 12 sides, each one carved to align with the stones around it as if the whole wall was planned down to the smallest detail. And here's where the real mystery starts. The Inca only had bronze tools, which are far too soft to cut into rocks as tough as andesite and diorite. These volcanic stones are so hard that even modern equipment struggles with them. Yet somehow, the surfaces here are smooth, the edges are sharp, and the curves flow together like melted plastic molded into shape. How did they manage this with what they had? Scholars have tried to answer. Some suggest hammering with harder stones like hematite, slowly pounding down the surface. Others think maybe the builders spent endless days grinding the rocks into shape. But even those theories don't fully explain how every single joint came out so neat, consistent, and complex. When you look closely, the walls reveal more secrets. Some blocks are carved with odd knobs and dips, placed so intentionally they couldn't have been mistakes. Were they meant to help the walls resist earthquakes? Were they signs with hidden meanings, a kind of forgotten code carved into stone? Whatever their purpose, they weren't added later or patched on. They were built right into the rocks themselves, as if the builders wanted these details to last as long as the walls. Among all the wonders at Ollantaytambo, the Temple of the Sun feels like the builders were showing off just how far their skills could reach. The stone blocks here are not only huge but polished so finely that in certain spots they almost shine back at you. They weren't placed at random either. The entire layout seems to be designed to catch and channel sunlight during the solstices, proof that whoever planned it had a deep understanding of the sky and how the sun moved across it. And they managed this nearly 9,000 feet above sea level without maps, blueprints, or the kind of survey tools we rely on today. What makes the whole thing even more mind-bending is how the structure was built to handle earthquakes. The builders didn't repeat the same stone shapes. Instead, they cut each one differently, creating walls that look like giant jigsaw puzzles. But this wasn't just for beauty. That unusual design lets the walls absorb and spread the force of tremors, allowing them to bend without breaking. They weren't just piling rocks together, they were engineering for the shaky ground under their feet. And the shocking part is that it still works. Centuries later, the walls still stand while many later Spanish colonial buildings in the same area crumbled. Modern engineers have even admitted that certain details of this construction would be tough to copy today, even with advanced machines. That doesn't mean the site is otherworldly, but it does mean we're missing a chapter in human knowledge. Either the Inca or people before them had mastered ideas about geometry, balance, and raw materials that we can't fully piece together anymore. What lingers in front of those walls isn't just history, it's a quiet challenge. The blocks show no tool marks, the joints are intentionally complex, and the whole place seems to resist both time and disaster. Something very real and very effective was used here, but the method has slipped away. The question remains hanging in the air like an echo. If not with the tools we know they had, then how in the world was it built? Mysteries, debates, and hidden truths. Ollantaytambo has become a place where ideas clash as much as stones. On one side are traditional archaeologists who rely on proven timelines, carbon dating, and cultural patterns to explain history. On the other side are engineers, independent researchers, and curious skeptics who look at the site and shake their heads, saying the official story doesn't add up. The gap between these views is growing. Experts argue that the Inca were capable of amazing work using simple tools, clever planning, and large teams of workers. They point to similar stonework in Cusco, Sacsayhuamán, and Machu Picchu as proof of a recognizable Inca style. From this perspective, the puzzle isn't about how it could be done, it's about the incredible effort it took. Ropes, ramps, sleds, and levers, combined with hundreds of hands and months of labor, should have been enough. But engineers studying the site aren't satisfied, not because they doubt the Inca's intelligence, but because the logistics seem impossible. Moving a 50-ton stone across a valley, floating it over a river, dragging it up a steep mountain, and then shaping it with millimeter accuracy seems beyond what simple tools could achieve. Even stones abandoned halfway along the route, near the river, only make the mystery deeper. Why were some left unfinished while others show such perfect craftsmanship? The debate takes an even stranger turn when the idea comes up that Ollantaytambo might not be entirely Inca. Some cautiously suggest the fortress was built in layers, with the Inca inheriting or modifying an older foundation left by a civilization more advanced than previously thought. Around the world, civilizations are often built on the ruins of those before them, so it isn't impossible. But in academic circles, even hinting at this raises eyebrows. Without hard proof, speculation is rarely accepted. The challenge is that Ollantaytambo doesn't reveal its story easily. There are no inscriptions, no written records, only massive stones, silent, unmovable, and stubbornly refusing to tell their secrets. In a field where written evidence usually outweighs physical anomalies, stone alone struggles to rewrite what we think we know about history. Some researchers who look beyond traditional explanations notice strange details that don't fit with what we know about the Inca. There are marks on the stones that don't match the tools they used, surfaces polished far smoother than bronze could manage, walls aligned to catch sunlight during solstices, and even hints that the temple might have been designed to carry sound in unusual ways. A few theorists go further, suggesting that local plants could have been used to soften stone for carving. There's no proof for this, but it sparks the imagination. Others think that if the Inca didn't shape the most puzzling parts of Ollantaytambo, then an earlier civilization must have. This would be a group of people long gone, highly skilled and knowledgeable in ways we've forgotten. Not myths, not aliens, just humans with abilities that challenge our current understanding of history. That idea shakes up standard timelines, forcing historians to wonder if we've underestimated what early Americans could accomplish. The debate isn't just about facts, it stirs emotions. For some, imagining that the Inca weren't the original builders feels like erasing their legacy. For others, ignoring the gaps in the story feels like refusing to see the truth. Through all of this, the fortress itself stays silent, refusing to give away its secrets. The stones remain unmoved above the sacred valley, while tourists wander through terraces, locals carry on with daily life, and researchers circle again and again, drawn by the same mystery that has fascinated generations. Ollantaytambo isn't simply a ruin, it's a puzzle, a quiet challenge daring us to rethink the limits of ancient human skill, and its stones are far from being spoken. Ollantaytambo in the spotlight. By 2025, Ollantaytambo finally stepped out from Machu Picchu's long shadow. The Peruvian government officially ranked it as a top-tier heritage site, putting it on the same level as the nation's most famous landmarks. This isn't just a nod for tourists, it's a signal that the fortress deserves more attention, careful study, and protection. For years, only a small circle of historians and alternative researchers focused on it. Now it's entering the global spotlight. The New York Times even included it in its list of 52 must-see destinations for 2025, sparking worldwide curiosity. With fame comes responsibility. How can visitors explore without damaging it? How do researchers balance the urge to uncover secrets with the need to preserve every stone? Technology is giving us new ways to approach these questions. Teams are now using 3D scans, ground-penetrating radar, and artificial intelligence to explore Ollantaytambo like never before. They can peer beneath the surface, spotting hidden layers, underground structures, or hints of older foundations without breaking the soil. Tiny surface studies are revealing tool marks invisible to the naked eye. For some, these tools might finally solve the puzzle. For others, they may only make the mystery deeper. Ollantaytambo isn't just a site waiting to be explained. It's a challenge, testing what we think we know about history, lost knowledge, and human skill. The fortress has outlived its creators, survived empires, and resisted every attempt to fully understand it. Each stone, silent and perfect, seems to measure what we've forgotten. Perched above the sacred valley, it is not ruined, it is undefeated. Whether it was the Inca, their ancestors, or a civilization lost to time, one thing is obvious: this was no ordinary construction. Whoever built it had knowledge we still cannot fully grasp, and that is why its secrets are far from finished. We've already tried solving the megalithic puzzle, but we need to unveil some details about Ollantaytambo that most people never knew about. So, stay tuned. A living history carved in stone. People have lived in Ollantaytambo for thousands of years, possibly as far back as 3,500 years ago. Long before the Inca arrived, Earlier civilizations had already settled here. Around the area of the town, archaeologists have found traces of the Huari people, who lived between 600 and 1000 AD. One important site, the fortress of Pumamarca, acted as a military stronghold, controlling access to the region along what would later become part of the famous Inca Trail. In the middle of the 15th century, the Inca emperor Pachacuti conquered the town, which had already existed, and rebuilt it into something grand. He transformed Ollantaytambo into his personal estate, constructing lavish buildings and creating an intricate system of terraces and irrigation throughout the Urubamba Valley. These terraces weren't just decoration, they were farmed by the emperor's loyal servants, known as Yanacuna, while the town provided comfortable housing for the Inca nobility. After Pachacuti passed away, control of the estate went to his family clan, the Panaca. Centuries later, during the Spanish invasion of Peru, Ollantaytambo played a vital role as a stronghold for Manco Inca, who led the Inca resistance. He fortified the town and its surrounding paths, especially toward Cusco, which the Spanish had already captured. In 1537, near the plain of Mascabamba, Manco Inca faced a Spanish expedition and managed a remarkable victory at the Battle of Ollantaytambo, using the high terraces to block their advance and even flooding the plains to defend his people. Despite this success, he realized his position wasn't secure in the long run. So in 1538, he moved deeper into the forest to establish a new capital at Vilcabamba, starting what historians call the Neo-Inca state. After 2 years, the local population of Ollantaytambo was placed under the Spanish encomienda system and assigned to Hernando Pizarro, marking a shift from Inca control to colonial rule. Centuries later, in the 19th century, foreign explorers took notice of the Inca ruins here. Figures like Clements Markham, Ephraim Squire, Charles Wiener, and Ernst Middendorf visited Ollantaytambo, studying its architecture and leaving behind detailed accounts of what they discovered. Their writings helped share the story of this extraordinary place with the world, revealing layers of history that stretched far beyond the Inca themselves. In 1911, Hiram Bingham III made a stop at Ollantaytambo while traveling up the Urubamba River on his expedition to discover Machu Picchu. The town itself sits along the Patacancha River, near where it meets the larger Wilcanuta River. The main settlement spreads along the left side of the Patacancha, while a smaller area called Aracama rests on the opposite bank. Rising beyond Aracama is the main Inca ceremonial center, perched on a hill known as Cerro Bandolista. Around this heart of the town, numerous Inca buildings and structures can be found, each holding its own story, creating a web of history that stretches across the surrounding slopes and terraces. The heart of Ollantaytambo's town is laid out in a neat, organized grid. 4 long streets run down its length, crossed by 7 streets stretching across, creating a network that feels both planned and deliberate. At the center of this layout sits a wide plaza, possibly spanning 4 city blocks, open toward the east, while halls and other town sections frame its remaining sides. In the southern half, the city blocks follow a uniform design, each built around 2 conchas, enclosed compounds where 4 small one-room buildings circle a central courtyard. The northern half tells a different story. The structures there are more irregular, and many have deteriorated over time, making it difficult to tell exactly how they were originally arranged. Yet the remnants still whisper about the town's organized but evolving life centuries ago. Now, what do you think about this mystery discovery? Do you think it just existed with humans or built by them? Let's hear from you in the comments. Remember to hit the like button and subscribe. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video.